Hi children, I am going to start a new lesson today. The title of the lesson is Rights Approach to Development. Rights Approach to Development. In this lesson, we are going to learn about some of the important human rights and in particular Right to Information Act, which was passed in 2005 by the Government of India. This Right to Information Act was passed by the Government of India in 2005, and we are going to learn about this RTI Act in particular in this lesson. Human rights are so important for human beings, for their survival as well as their all-round development also. These human rights are very much important. And these are so important that all the countries in the world have granted these rights to the citizens of their countries. Irrespective of their caste, religion, creed, gender, etc., these rights, human rights, have been granted to all the citizens of all the countries. And these human rights cannot be denied to anyone. Under any circumstances, these human rights cannot be denied to anyone. And when we talk about poverty, two of these human rights are very, very important. What are those two rights? They are right to dignified life and right to liberty and freedom. Right to life means everyone has the right to live. Not just to live, but to live a dignified life. That is basic right of each and every citizen. And right to liberty and freedom. That means people can do or believe or speak out what they want without fear. If they can talk or express their opinions without fear, freely, without causing loss of freedom for other citizens. That is called as right to liberty and freedom. So these two rights are very much important when we talk about the poverty. Now, in our previous chapter, we have learned about poverty. And poverty is not merely lack of food and being hungry. Only if people don't have food to eat, or if they are hungry, it does not mean poverty. Poverty means lack of resources like land and or education. If people don't have resources like land of their own, or they don't have education, then that is called as poverty. If people have land of their own, they can make use of this land as a resource, and they can grow crops and it becomes a source of income for them. And similarly, if people have education as a resource, they can get employment opportunities, which is also a source of income, and they can easily make out their source of livelihood if they are educated. So, poverty means lack of employment opportunities, and it means lack of access to basic needs of life. That is education, health services, food, shelter, etc. So, poverty means lack of employment opportunities, and it also means the lack of access to basic needs of life like education, health services, food, shelter, etc. And due to lack of all these resources, people don't have voice in many of the matters that means no one cares what the poor people say, because they don't have all these facilities. That means all these rights, like they don't have resources, people don't have voice in many of the matters. That means no one cares what the poor people say, and they also cannot influence any of the policies of implementation of programs by the government, because they are not educated, because they don't have any resources, they don't have their own land, they are poor people, and because of that they cannot influence any of the policies or programs or implementation of programs by the government. Now, how can people come out of the situation of poverty? How can they get the basic resources and facilities to rise above poverty levels? It is possible with the intervention of the government. Only if the government interferes, it is possible. Very often, people in the government feel that they are doing some sort of charity by providing different facilities and programs for the welfare of the poor people. Always they speak like that only, as if they are doing some favor to the poor people by providing facilities and by introducing some programs for their development or for their welfare. And they also feel that the money spent on such things is a burden to the government. And because the government is doing some favor to the poor people. But in fact, it is the fundamental right of the people to get all these facilities or welfare programs for their welfare. And when once this fundamental right is recognized, the money spent by the government on welfare programs, etc., will not be considered as a waste but as a duty of the government. It is the duty of the government, it is the responsibility of the government to provide all these facilities. They are not doing any favor to the people, they are not providing any charity. It is the duty and the responsibility of the government towards people, and it will be seen as a necessary investment for the future of the country. If the government spends any money on such welfare programs, it will be seen as a necessary investment for the future of the country, because people are the future of the country. Now, when the United Nations organization was formed in 1945, on 24th October 1945, it was formed after the Second World War to establish peace in the world countries. All those countries which became members of United Nations organization, they agreed that human rights relating to freedom and economic development, two human rights, that is relating to freedom and economic development, are fundamental rights of all the human beings. These two are the basic rights of all the human beings. What are those two rights? Rights relating to freedom and rights relating to economic development. Now, many countries, all the countries, they agreed to this, and many countries, they guaranteed these rights relating to freedom but not economic well-being. They did not, many of the countries, they guaranteed the rights relating to freedom, but they did not guarantee right related to economic well-being, like employment, providing employment, fair wages, right to access to education, health services, housing, food. All these are the rights which are related to economic well-being of the people. So these rights were not provided by many of the countries. Though they provided the rights relating to freedom, the rights relating to economic well-being, like employment, fair wages, right to access to education or health services, housing and food, they were not provided by many of the countries. But in 1993, once again, all the countries agreed that both kinds of rights are essential for the people. What are those both kinds of rights? Rights relating to freedom and rights relating to economic development. Both these are basic rights which are needed by all the human beings. Now, what do we mean when we say that people have a right to food or right to education? What does it mean? It means that it is the responsibility of the government, it is the duty of the government to provide these for all the people. If we are saying people have the right to food, it is the duty of the government, it is the responsibility of the government to provide food to all the people. When we are saying right to education is the right of all the people, that means it is the responsibility of the government to provide education to all the people. Housing, provide housing to all the people. Employment, providing employment opportunities for all the people whoever are eligible. They must be provided employment opportunities by the government. So, whenever we say the people have a certain right, people have the right to enjoy these rights, that means it is the duty of the government to provide these things for which the people are eligible. So, the government should be legally bound to, the government should make sure that these facilities like right to food, education, health, housing, employment, they are provided to all the people, all the citizens, irrespective of their caste, creed and religion. And if they are not ensured, if they are not provided to the people, people can go to the court to enforce their rights, because these rights are protected by the courts. And it also means that people they can, if suppose they are not provided these facilities or these rights by the government, they can demand food, education, housing, medical treatment, everything they can demand as their rights, because it is their right. And this is only possible when the government makes certain laws based on these ideas. Based on these ideas which we have discussed now, if the government makes certain laws and implements them strictly, then only it is possible. And in the last few years, the government has made many such laws. For example, Right to Information Act was passed in 2005, Right to Employment, it has been made by the government, and Right to Education, and even National Food Security Act has been passed by the central government in 2013. So many such laws which provide food, shelter or employment opportunities to the people, they are passed by the government. Now, need for information to fight for corruption. Now we are coming to the point RTI, right to information. Now let us see how there is need for information to fight for corruption, and that too through RTI, Right to Information Act. The government system is very large and complex system. This we already know. The government system is very large and it is complex system. And in this complex system, it is very difficult to make sure that the policies and programs introduced by the government for the welfare of the people are being implemented properly or not. It is very difficult to check whether all the policies and programs introduced by the government for the welfare of the people are being implemented properly or not. And every now and then, the government is starting many new programs and introducing new policies for the benefit of the poor and backward people. But the benefits of all such programs and policies do not reach the people for whom they are meant. And often, funds allotted by the government for such programs get diverted. And a major reason for this is corruption. And nowadays, there is hardly any field where this corruption doesn't take place. And the main reason for this corruption to increase is that the common people, they do not have any information or idea about the programs of the government and how they are being implemented. Because people don't have any idea or information about the government's programs and policies, the corruption is going on increasing. And there is no source for common people to check how money or funds are being spent by the government on various programs. There is no source for common people, even if they want to check, even if they want to know, there is no source. There is no law made on this subject. So if a project is undertaken by the government to eliminate poverty and unemployment, people must know each and every detail about how funds are being utilized, for which work the funds are being utilized, number of workers employed, and money spent by the government on wages, for how many days the labor worked to complete the project, etc., etc. All this information must be made known to the people. Because, as you know, in a democracy, it is people's money that is spent by the government to carry out welfare programs. It is our money only, it is people's money. So, it is the money that is collected from the people in the form of various taxes. So, it is the right of each and every citizen to know such information. And earlier, such information about the policies and programs of the government or functioning of the government departments, about the functioning of the various government departments, it was provided only to the elected representatives to check corruption. And if these elected representatives themselves are corrupt, who will check it? That must be given to the people. That right must be given to the people so that they can check it. Now let us see how this movement began, how the movement began. A group of people, that means to struggle for getting this right to information, how the movement was started. A group of people in Rajasthan, they organized themselves under the banner of Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, MKSS, and they demanded information from the government officials. There was no legal provision till then to give the details of the information as required by the people. Till then, RTA was not passed. So, there was no legal provision to give the details of the information. But initially, these documents were collected with the help of officials. People, they collected from the officials and they evaluated these documents through public meetings. They discussed in the public meetings and then they carried out their programs. And soon, very soon, the officials began to resist the idea of providing or disclosing the information to common people. When, like Rajasthan, in many other states also, people demanded information, the government officials began to resist the idea of providing or disclosing the information to the common people. There was no RTI Act at that time, please remember. So this finally led to many rallies, marches by the people demanding information about the functioning of the government. And for 3 years, people led many rallies, many strikes, many marches were led by the people And people demanded that information about government's policies and programs and also functions of different departments and government expenditure on various items, it is very important for their own welfare. And as government is supposed to work for the welfare of the people, so people have the right to get any information from the government. And they also argued that such information about government functioning is crucial for the development of human beings and also to protect the democratic rights of the people. And in a democracy, people can participate in governance and make sure that the benefits of the developmental programs reach the needy people. And this is possible only when they have information about the functioning of the government in the form of official documents. If they are given information in the form of official documents, then only they can fight for this and they can participate in the governance. And if information is provided to the people, that means the government is transparent and nothing can be hidden from the people. And this makes the government more responsible. And if the government comes to know that everything is transparent, people know everything, nothing can be hidden from them, then the government becomes more responsible, more accountable, and more answerable to the common people. Whatever questions are asked by the common people, the government has to answer. It is answerable, it is accountable, and it is responsible to the common people. And also, it will help check corruption. So, this type of information is crucial for the survival of the poor people. And if any information is made available to the common people, arbitrary decisions by the elected representatives or the officials can be controlled. Arbitrary decisions means on the spot. Sometimes the elected representative, they take some decisions and they say they will implement it. So such arbitrary decisions by the elected representatives or any of the government officials can be controlled. And after many years of struggle, a law was made by the government of India that a law making it compulsory to give official information was made in the state of Rajasthan first. In the state of Rajasthan in 1995, the first such act was made to give official information to the people whenever required. And during the next years, many other states also, they adopted similar laws. They also made similar laws and they provided information to the people. And then at the central level, that is national level, the Right to Information Act was passed at the Parliament in 2005. And today, the right to information is a fundamental right. It is recognized as a fundamental right. Under two fundamental rights as freedom of expression and right to life, it is considered within the Constitution. Now, as of now, the right to information is a fundamental right according to the Indian Constitution. Now, the provisions under RTI. Now, let us see what are the provisions of RTI, Right to Information Act. It was passed in 2005, as I told you. And according to this RTI, any individual can get any information from the government departments, which is in the form of documents like reports, advices, logbooks, rules, emails, data, etc. or facts. In the form of all these things, we can find the information. Information is found in these different forms. And the person who wants to get any information, he or she has to pay a small amount towards charges of making a copy of the document. It is very small amount towards making a copy of the document. They have to pay these charges. And people who belong to BPL families, they need not pay any charges also. It is provided free of cost to such people. Now, to respond to the questions asked by the people about any information, in every government department there is an information officer who is in charge. An information officer will be there in each and every government department, and he is in charge of answering to the questions asked by the people regarding providing information, required information to the people. Both at state level and central level also, there is an appellate authority. Above this information officer, there will be an appellate authority. At state level, an appellate authority, and central level, appellate authority. Appellate authority means to whom we can may appeal in case of any problem. For example, our school is there. Suppose a school is there or school is there. In our school, if you have problem, children have any problem, they go to the principal ma'am. So, principal is the appellate authority at school level. Like that, in each and every government department, whether it is state level or central level, there are first information officers, and above them there are appellate authorities to make sure that action is taken. Whenever any information is asked by the people, action must be taken immediately. And to make sure that appellate authorities are there above these information officers. And at state level, this appellate authority is known as State Information Officer, and at central level, Central Information Officer. And these are again headed by SPIC, State Public Information Commission at state level, and CPIC means Central Public Information Commissioner at central level. So from higher to lower I am coming. At state level, SPIC is the highest authority. Below that it will be State Information Officer, and below that Information Officer. At central level, CPIC, highest authority, that is Central Public Information Commission, and below that Central Information Officer, and below that Information Officer. Now, according to this Act, RTI Act, the government departments are supposed to provide the required information within the prescribed time. They cannot take long time to answer the questions. They have to provide the information within the prescribed time, and they cannot hold the information for long time. And if the information is not provided within the prescribed time, a complaint can be made to the higher officer, and a case can be registered at the State or Central Information Commission. Now, since it is mandatory to provide any information about the functioning of any government department, many of the government departments are providing information about basic aspects of their institutions without being asked also. For example, whenever a road or project is repaired or constructed, you might have seen a notice board displaying the details of the public works undertaken. That is, total expenditure, total number of workers who work, time taken for the project. Also, in many hospitals, you might have seen the notice board with the names of the doctors in charge of different branches and their contact numbers, etc. Now, right to food and right to employment, these two rights help people to live with dignity. And it is not because the government is kind to the poor and providing employment and access to food at reasonable rates. The government is providing these only because these are the rights of people. So it is the duty of the government to provide these rights, to provide these things, food or employment or anything else. Now, right of children to free and compulsory education. In 2002, the Indian Parliament has recognized education as a fundamental right to education, and through 86th Amendment of the Constitution, according to RTE, all the children between 6 to 14 years of age are entitled for free and compulsory education. And this law was finally passed in 2009. Now let us see one or two important provisions of the Act. To ensure availability of schools, according to this Act, RTE, Right to Education Act, the government has to provide schools in the neighborhood. The government has to provide all the infrastructure facilities and also all the other facilities which are required for the children. They are to be provided to the schools. Faculty is to be recruited, teachers are to be recruited, and benches, blackboards, all these infrastructure must be provided to the schools. And RT, Right to Education, it also declares that all children of the age group of 6 to 14 years have the right to free education. And the state has to ensure that sufficient number of schools are built in the neighborhood of all the children. And the government also should see that qualified teachers are appointed, and all the necessary provisions are provided in the school. All the infrastructure needed by the school for the people are provided. And it also declares that the education should ensure all-round development of the children. The education must be in such a way that it provides all-round development of the children. Learning through activities, learning through discovery, exploration, and in a child-friendly manner. That means teacher-student friendly manner. And it also states that children should be taught in their mother tongue only, and they should be free of fear. There should be no fear. They must be free to express their doubts and anxiety and be able to express their views freely. And in case free neighborhood schools are not available, suppose there are no schools in the neighborhood for the children available, made available by the government, in case sufficient number of teachers are not there in the school, or sufficient teaching learning materials are not provided, that means all the infrastructure is not provided, or if a child is beaten or terrorized by the teachers or forced to study in unfriendly manner, such children can complain to the courts against the authorities, because it is a fundamental right. Now it is protected by the courts, and in such a case the children can make a complaint to the courts against such schools or such authorities. Now the lesson is completed. As usual, I am giving you homework. Read full lesson and underline all the key points and complete the blanks in the material.